mysterious symbols, timelines revealed in dreams, messages of doom? The books of Daniel and Revelation can seem like the most daunting parts of the Bible. You might think, maybe I'll read that later. These books may be complicated at first glance, but they embody the beautiful unveiling of Jesus' rescue plan for our world, a plan which is unfolding right now. That's why we've created a unique space at godled.org, where you can study these important books of prophecy for yourself, one interactive lesson at a time. Starting today, learn how the Bible unlocks itself. Go at your own pace and get real feedback from the God-led community as you study through our easy-to-navigate course. Don't wait any longer to understand God's plan for you as revealed in these important prophecies. Start unraveling the biblical books of Daniel and Revelation at godled.org.
We'd like to welcome everyone to our 2021 virtual camp meeting. This evening's speaker is James Winegardner. He's a native of Texas. He served the church as a lawyer and pastor and is currently the senior pastor of the Keene Seventh-day Adventist Church. He's married to Mary Ellen Roberts Winegardner, and they have 3 daughters, Megan, Emma, and Lily. James enjoys studying and sharing the good news. His message this evening is Naaman, God's dirt. If you'll pray with me now. Father God, thank you so much for another evening to be blessed by this camp meeting. And Lord, I just want to pray a special prayer for Elder Winegardner as he brings the message and that we hear his words. But what we really need this evening, Lord, is a word from you. We want to ask that your Spirit fills our hearts, our minds, no matter where we're watching this from. The great thing is that you're there with us and you meet us exactly where we're at. So Lord, fill our hearts, fill our minds, and just let this be a blessing for us today, this evening. We love you. Amen.
We would see Jesus, Master and Teacher, friend of sinners, light of the world, divine and human, blessed Redeemer, Lord of our hearts, God's holy well. We would see Jesus, hear of his story, with songs of joy our hearts we bring, till when he comes back one day in glory, when we shall see him as our King. Have this hope that burns within our hearts, hope in the coming of the Lord.
Warm greetings to our virtual camp meeting attendees. We are so glad you have joined us. I am Silke Hubbard, and I serve the constituents of the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference as the Trust Services Director and Association Secretary. And I'd like to introduce to you my teammate and right-hand person, Margie Knoll.
We wanted to share with you for a bit what it is like to assist you with our estate planning documents.
We are not attorneys and don't offer legal advice, but we are happy to share information with all of you.
We encourage you to have an estate plan in place, which will make things easier for your loved ones who are left behind and have to deal with your estate. So we'd like to share with you what the process looks like. Almost every day we receive calls or emails from people who are interested in estate planning documents and want to know more about what they look like and what you can accomplish with them. Silke, what are some of the documents that we share information about?
So one of the first documents that is important to have in place is your living will and healthcare surrogate form. First, you can appoint a person and 2 or more alternates as your healthcare surrogate agent who would be the contact persons to make medical decisions for you if you no longer can make those for yourself. They would be the contact person that the doctors would talk to and advise them as to what your health situation is like and what could or could not be done. The other part of this document gives information to the healthcare surrogate agent that you have indicated your preferences regarding end-of-life treatment. You can make the decisions ahead of time whether you want to be kept alive under all circumstances or whether you would choose to not have any heroic measures taken and just be kept comfortable. You can make choices whether you would allow for a feeding tube, whether you would want breathing assistance, whether you want CPR done if your heart stops, and whether you want to have IV fluids if you cannot swallow on your own. And another part of this document allows you to make post-death decisions, such as organ donation, whether or not you would allow your healthcare surrogate agent to have the power to authorize an autopsy, and whether you would allow for them to make decisions about the final disposition of your body by cremation or burial. I have seen situations where this living will and healthcare surrogate form has been a great relief to family members when they could point out that the person who was on their deathbed had already made decisions on his or her treatment, and thus they were able to honor that person's request. Usually it takes a lot of stress off the family in a time where you have enough worries and fears to know that when it comes time to make tough decisions, you have a written backup for those decisions. Often, just going through the process of making out the living will and healthcare surrogate form has provoked good conversations amongst family members to discuss those tough decisions and share one's opinions and options on what to do when it does come down to life and death.
The second document that is very important to have in place is a general power of attorney. This is a document where you can appoint a person and 2 or more alternates whom you trust to be your attorney in fact. This person could step in if need be and take care of your business and everyday matters. For example, the person could pay your bills and make deposits and withdrawals on your behalf. He or she could sell your assets if need be, open bank accounts, close bank accounts, make investments for you, or do any other business that you would normally do yourself. These are just a few of the examples of what this person would be empowered to do. This is a good document to have if you should become ill for a long time or incapacitated for whatever reason. This document could also be handy if you were to travel away for an extensive period of time and needed someone to step in and take care of your business. It is typically a document that is effective immediately upon signing, so it is important you appoint persons that you know are trustworthy and capable. If you don't have a power of attorney document in place, it takes weeks and sometimes months to get a court to appoint a surrogate for you, and that involves court cost and attorney cost that could have been completely avoided by signing this 3 to 4 page document.
The last but not least important document we'd like to tell you about is a last will and testament. This document becomes effective after you pass away, and though we all don't like to think about our demise, you will do your family and friends a huge favor by having this document in place. In it, you will appoint an executor, which is now called a personal representative, who will handle your estate and make sure that your final bills are paid and then make distribution according to your will. You get to decide what your children or family members will inherit, and if you would like to support your local church or conference ministry or charity that you have cared for all of your life. The possibilities on how you can provide for your family and the causes you believe in are endless. This last will and testament is also so important if you have minor children, so you can decide who would be your children's guardians and trustee. You have the power to appoint people that you trust and that you know align with your values that you have in mind for your children.
Question: so what happens when someone dies without having executed a last will and testament?
So if someone dies without a last will and testament, it's called leaving an intestate estate. Family members have to step in and file a petition with the courts to determine who will be appointed as the administrator, who is entitled to inherit based on the state laws for intestate distribution, which is determined by their relationship to the deceased person. No extra provisions can be made for family members who maybe have a disability, or your estate won't be able to remember your favorite charity, or any non-related friends whom you would like to remember to receive a share of your estate. The process of distributing your estate without a last will and testament can be much more costly and time-consuming for everyone left behind. To summarize, the advantages of having a last will and testament are the following. You can name your own personal representative. You can provide for someone else other than next of kin. You will avoid unnecessary court procedures and petitions that you have to file. You will avoid many administrative costs. You have the opportunity to appoint a guardian and trustee for your minor children who you would determine would be best for your children, not the court would appoint somebody. You can also legally avoid or minimize taxes, and you have the opportunity to remember your favorite church or charity to make a difference and leave a legacy.
So let's share what this process looks like.
So once we set up your appointment via phone or Zoom, and sometimes in person, we gather the information from you that is necessary for these documents. Then we send them to the attorney, who will look them over, and he or she prepares documents based on the information that was provided by you.
When the documents are completed by the attorney who emails them to us, we print them and mail them to you with detailed instructions on how to get them signed and notarized. We ask you to proofread the documents, and if everything looks good, then you can schedule an appointment with a notary and 2 witnesses in order to get the documents signed and executed. At that point, the documents are valid and good to go. If there are any mistakes, or if you need to make a change or adjustment, we encourage you to contact us so that these things can be corrected, and then we send back to you the corrected pages or documents so you can get them signed.
And this whole process takes about 1 month or so, and we encourage you to follow through with getting it completed so that your mind can be at peace about it. And as uncomfortable as the thoughts on disability, aging, or death can be, 100% of the time, people who have completed their documents say that they are happy to have gone through this process and taken care of their documents. Once our constituents have their documents in place, we encourage them to review them every 2 to 5 years to make sure that the people you have appointed are still alive, that your distribution still reflects your wishes, and that your current state and city of residency hasn't changed.
So please don't hesitate to contact us at the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference Office so that we can help you. We'd love to talk with you.
Our scripture reading tonight is 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 15 to 17. When he returned to the man of God, he and all of his army, he came and stood before him and said, "Please now, I know that there is no God in all of the world except in Israel. So then, please take a gift from your servant." And he said, "As Yahweh lives, before whom I stand, I surely will not take it." Still, he urged him to take it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, "If not, then please let a load of soil on a pair of mules be given to your servants, for your servant will never again bring a burnt offering and sacrifice to other gods, but only to Yahweh."
wasted the pleasures I have tasted that you were never in. And I confess, though your love is in me, it doesn't always win me when competing with my sin. And I repent, making no excuses. I repent, there's no one else to blame. And I return to fall in love with Jesus. I bow down on my knees and I repent. I lament the idols I've accepted, the commandments I've rejected to pursue my selfish end. And I confess I need you to revive me, put selfishness behind me, and take up my cross again. And I repent, making no excuses. I repent, there's no one else to blame. And I return to fall in love with Jesus. I bow down on my knees and I return to fall in love with Jesus. I bow down on my knees and I repent.
Good evening. Tonight, our last night together, we're going to be talking about the story of Naaman. I call him a mighty leper named Delight. You know, the name Naaman means delight. Delight or blessing. And I think it's a story of contrasts. I counted 7, but I think you can count some more. You might want to read this story over. It's a very brief story in the Bible and see how many contrasts you can find, because this is definitely a story in which God shows up, and He shows up as absolutely different than what anybody would have expected. We begin in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1. The king of Aram, and Aram is Syria, had a great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him, Yahweh had given Aram great victories. But through Naaman, though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from a serious skin disease. It references it as leprosy in different parts of the story. We know that now that it probably, there were a number of skin diseases that could kill you back then. Leprosy was one of them. It could have been what we think of as Hansen's disease today. It doesn't matter. A grievous skin disease or a serious skin disease means a skin disease that was ultimately going to result in his death. So I don't know what it was, but we don't know what it was, but no scholar does. We're just speculating. But we know it was serious. It was not purely cosmetic. If it was cosmetic, he would have just covered it up and moved on. So in this paragraph, 2 Kings 5:1, we see three big accolades. 3 is an important number, and to say something 3 times in a different way is to really, really mean it, to emphasize it in the Hebrew language. So number 1, the king had great admiration. He was a great man and highly regarded. Number 2, Yahweh gave him victories. And number 3, he was a powerful hero. Dare we say a superhero. He was a mighty man of valor is what the Bible often calls him and calls people of this. You remember David had his mighty men of valor. So this mighty man of valor, he was a really great guy. And the only thing wrong with him was apparently this skin condition. Verse 2, at this time, Aramean raiders, that's people from what we now call Syria, had invaded the land of Israel. You remember last time we talked about the Elijah came up and gave Elisha his mantle, and he had appointed a king in Samaria, in Israel, and he appointed a king in Damascus, in Syria. So this may still be those same kings. It could be other kings, but it could still be the same kings. And so this was the Syrian king that our friend Naaman is so important too. At this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day, the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So here's contrast number 1. Naaman, big, powerful guy, a warrior, a mighty hero, friend of the king, uber powerful. And then here's this little girl, the lowest of the low. She's a child, she's a female, she's been captive as a slave, and she's a household servant, okay? So you can't get any bigger contrast than that. So here's this little weak girl and this big, powerful Naaman. Now, in this little sentence or paragraph here, there is a really interesting wordplay in Hebrew that I want to share with you. And I deny being a Hebrew scholar, but I do like to read about these things. So the idiom, you know what an idiom is? When we say things that mean something, but they don't mean what you'd expect. So in English, we say, look, son, you better get on the ball. Well, if you translated that to another language, they'd say, what ball are we talking about here? I don't understand balls, and why would you get on it? Is that going to help him to get his stuff done? What's going on? So that would be an idiom. So if you translate that to another language, you'd translate that, son, you need to do your work better, right? It's not nearly as colorful, and that's why we use get on the ball or get your stuff together or whatever. So here is an idiom. When it says she was given to Naaman's wife as a maid, what the Hebrew says there is she came before the face of Naaman's wife. So coming before the face means that you approach as a lesser and you receive your instructions. Well, here it is. This is fun wordplay. One day, the girl said to her mistress, I wish if only the master would come before the face of the prophet in Samaria. So what she's saying is, I wish in the same way that I've been put before you as a servant, that Naaman would go as a servant to the prophet in Samaria, meaning Elisha. This telegraphs that our friend Naaman is going to have to humble himself in order to be healed in this story. So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. Go and visit the prophet. The king of Aram told him, I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out carrying his gifts, 750 pounds of silver, today's price $270,000-ish, 150 pounds of gold, today's price $4 million-ish, and 10 sets of clothing. These would not be made-up clothing. These would be rolls of fine fabric, okay? In those days, especially in Damascus, rolls of fine fabric were considered a merchant good that had real serious monetary value. We don't know what it is. the monetary value because we don't know what, cloth, there's all levels of cloth, right? So we don't know. This is absolutely a preparation for a state visit. A state visit between the state of Aram, Syria, and the state of Israel at Samaria, the northern kingdom. Today, if we were going to have a state visit with another country that we want to be allies with, we might announce a foreign aid package. We might announce the sale and agreement to sell a certain number of F-16s or upgrades to their military or upgrades to their infrastructure. We might do any of those things, but in these days, the currency was currency and they carried it with them on their animals. The letter to the king of Israel said, and I quote, "With this letter, I present my servant Naaman, and I want you to heal him of his leprosy." Wow, that's a tall order. I can't imagine somebody coming to me and saying, "Here, I just want you to," I try to think of a simile for this one. And I think it's like, imagine for a minute that there's a knock at your door. You're mowing the lawn. You come back through the house and you open the door. And there standing in front of your door are a dozen Secret Service agents. You see the lumps here in their coat where they've got large weapons. They've got the little pins. They've got the microphone in their sleeve and the earpiece in their ear. And you could tell that they're Secret Service. They show you badges. They're Secret Service. And in the middle of them is the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. By the way, his name is Charles Rettig. So Rettig is standing there, Brother Rettig, and he says to you, he hands you a box, a file box, and there's a little letter on top. And he hands you the letter, and he says to you in the letter, "These are the records of the president's finances for the last 5 years. I want you to prepare the past due tax returns and file them. These men will wait here while you do that." Now, I know there are a few of you who are accountants and you'd relish the opportunity. The rest of us, on the other hand, would begin to sweat because this would look very much like a setup to get us into some trouble. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and he said, "Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy?" I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. Exactly what you'd think, right? So the IRS commissioner shows up at your door. You'd think the same exact thing. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him. "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me. He will learn that there is a true prophet in Israel." So here's our second big contrast. Here's the king. No power, lots of fear. Here's the prophet. No fear, lots of power. So Naaman went with his horses and his chariots, and he waited at the door of Elisha's house. Okay, so here's the state visit has now just been detoured. The state visit has gone from the king's palace. We know that Elisha's house is on the top of a hill. Some versions and translations call it a citadel, but it's probably a house on top of a hill. We remember the story where he opened his servant's eyes and they were all around him and all that sort of thing. So this is his house on the top of a hill. That's where he lives. It's a transfer of a state visit. All the pomp and circumstance of the retinue that comes with this Naaman fellow on behalf of and in the name of the king is there. No doubt that there would be soldiers. If you're going to send something like $4.5 million worth of goods on the back of camels, donkeys, or horses, you better send an armed detail to protect it. So there's going to be a bunch of soldiers, there's going to be some diplomats, and there's going to be Naaman at the head. But Elisha sent the messenger out to them with this message. "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, your skin will be restored and you'll be healed of your leprosy." This is a huge diss. This is major disrespect. When you go for a state visit to another state, there are protocols to be met. We have a State Department protocol office with a number of directors and lots of employees, probably costs you personally millions of dollars a year. You remember when you graduated from someplace and you lived in your parents' home. Probably it was high school, but some people had 8th grade graduation. So you graduate from someplace and people sent you cards. People showed up at your graduation if there was enough seats. And people also sent you sometimes a gift or some money, which was nice. And your parents said to you, you need to write thank you notes to everybody who sent you something. You remember that? Sure you do. That's a protocol. That's what's expected. We wouldn't want to violate a protocol and inadvertently insult another country so the other country thinks that this is a cause for dislike or even for war. But Elisha here is doing this on purpose. He is intending to give Naaman a step down. James 4, verse 6 quotes Proverbs 3:34 saying, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Isn't that interesting? Jesus talks about humility, about being the first being last and the last being first all the time. Matthew 23:8, but you are not to be called rabbi. This is our next big contrast. This is a contrast between the ostentatious retinue of Naaman and the Elisha who is just phoning it in. He doesn't even show up to the state dinner. He just phones it in. Matthew 23:8, Jesus said, but you're not to be called rabbi, because one is your teacher and all are brothers. And do not call anyone your father on earth, because one is your heavenly Father. And don't be called teachers, because one is your teacher, the Messiah. And the greatest among you will be your servant. And whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Wow, that's an interesting text. Dare we delve into that a little bit? What do you think it means? Don't call anybody teacher. I know I went to college. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist College, and we called their professors, we called them professor. Oh, well, it wasn't teacher, so it's okay, right? I'm not sure that there's any difference. That's what we used to call, at law school, we used to call that a distinction without a difference. Calling them professor instead of teacher. But let's get real. What about calling people pastor? Is that something we should be doing? If I read this text, he says, don't be called even teachers, because one is your teacher, Christ. And the greatest among you must be your servant. What should we call our pastors? What should we call our conference president? We call them elder, don't we? And why do we call them elder? Because it's an honorific. We want to honor them, and that's specifically what Jesus is prohibiting in this text. I don't know if you read it like I do, but I encourage you to, after we're done here, go to Matthew 23:8 and read it very carefully for yourself and see what you think it means. I think we should call our pastors brothers. I think we should call our pastors, if they're female, sisters. And I think we should call our conference president and our conference treasurer and our general conference president brother. Because we're all servants. We're all fellow servants. And I think that's the point Jesus was making. And I think we have fallen into an old trap where people call somebody father. They call them bishop. They call them papa in the church. And Jesus specifically prohibits it. And I don't know that pastors any different, elders any different, professors any different, but it's up to you. But Naaman became angry and he stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me. Naaman's pride was injured. His pride of person was injured. When Naaman, the field general of all Syria, shows up, he expects to be respected. I have a little prayer that I say. Maybe you join me with it. My prayer says, Lord, Let me be humble so that I don't need to be humiliated. He's expecting some level of respect. You know, I have this little saying thing that always rings in my ears. I hear people say this all the time. He needs to respect this, or she needs to understand that, or they need to be careful, or you've heard people say that. Whenever I hear that, it always puts my hackles up a little bit, because just because you think that's what they need, probably the reason you think that they need that is because they're not doing that, and they're probably not going to do that. So to say, they need to be careful, well, maybe that's exactly the problem. Maybe that's something we might consider not saying. He needs to remember that, he needs to know that sometimes we say that to God too, don't we? He needs to know that I sacrificed this. He needs to know that I'm trying real hard. He needs to know. Does he really need to know that? Maybe what we need to know is what we can control, not what he needs to know. So Naaman goes on, he says, I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord Yahweh his God and heal me. Do we ever pray to God in such a way that we really only want one answer to the prayer, and we want God to do it our way? We all want a God who's small enough for us to control, but big enough to do our bidding. Verse 12, aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abana and the Pharpar, better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned away in a rage. He gets his instructions. He doesn't like them. This is a pride of person and a pride of place. So Texas here, for those of you who aren't from Texas, Texas has no natural existing lakes. All of our lakes are impoundment, except for there's an argument that Caddo Lake isn't, but the Caddo Lake's really on the border with Louisiana, so we don't really have any lakes in Texas. We do have drainages or estuaries. We have, depending on how you count them, 7 or 9 rivers that drain Texas. I grew up in South Texas. And down in South Texas, we had the Frio Nueces, we had the Medina, and we had the Guadalupe. Those 3 rivers all come out of springs in limestone from the Edwards Aquifer. It's actually a very famous aquifer. It's one of the world's largest aquifers, and the water that comes out of it is remarkably pure. Many people in that area of South Texas drink that water without filtration right out of the well all their whole lives, and they thrive on it. The Frio River, if you've never been there, it is magnificent. I have floated on a tube on the Frio River, 15 feet deep, and watched my shadow pass along the bottom of the river 15 feet away. The water is cold, and of course, in Southwest Texas, the sun is hot. And so you can really feel the contrast between those temperatures, and it's just a magnificent experience. The Guadalupe and the Medina are equally clear and beautiful. So when I moved to North Texas, we've got the Trinity, the Red River, and the Brazos River. And I had a house on the Brazos River. The water is brown and warm. It is not anything like the rivers where I grew up. This poor Naaman, he's having the same problem. If you've been to the Jordan, you know that the Jordan is not a beautiful river in most of its places. There's a couple places that are very pretty. North of the Harp Lake or the Sea of Galilee, there are some pretty streams. But the real Jordan River between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea is mostly not very pretty. It does not matter which is prettier. It does not matter which river is more popular. I expect from the way he said it that both of these places were resorts. That those 2 rivers that he mentioned over in Damascus were beautiful places where beautiful people went to enjoy beautiful days. This is our 4th big contrast. Syria's beautiful river resorts versus the Jordan River. Would you rather be healed in Hawaii or El Paso? Give me Hawaii. Nothing against El Paso, it's just not Hawaii. Pride of person, pride of place. Verse 13, his officers tried to reason with him. They said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it?" We humans would like to rise to our own salvation. We would love to do it ourselves, but God's plan is consistent with reality. If we will be saved, if we will know God, we will see Him to the extent that we recognize our own humility, our own helplessness. Lord, please help me be humble so that you don't have to humiliate me. You should certainly obey Him. This is the servants talking to him. When He says simply, "Go and wash and be cured." Verse 14, so Naaman went down to the Jordan River. I'm sure he wasn't happy, but he went down to the Jordan River and he dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him. Friends, if there's a lesson from this whole thing, simple obedience to God. Not only is it a prescription for success, it's a prescription for healing, it's a prescription for restoration. I'm telling you, it makes people happy. And here is Naaman happy. Have you ever wondered why people are generally so unhappy? Because they're trying to figure out a new way to do it when God has already told us the right way to do it. His skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. Now, that's a fountain of youth right there. Everybody has looked for a fountain of youth. Nobody thought of the muddy Jordan River. So here's another contrast. Number 5, skin disease versus a young boy's skin. Naaman was so happy. I'm happy even reading about it, and I'm 3,000 years and half a world away from it. Verse 15, then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except Israel." Now this is a rare thing in the Old Testament. Here is God's plan for Israel, God's plan for His people, actually working and being worked out by His people. His plan for His people always was that their trust in God, their reliance on God, their obedience to God would bring the rest of the world to them to be saved. And here it works. The promise of God's people, of His special children of Israel, blessing the whole world. This is an example of Him blessing the Gentiles. No preaching, no Bible studies. How much do you think Naaman understood about worship of Yahweh? Not much. Simple call to obedience. And then God reveals His glory in the obedience. "So please," Naaman said, "accept a gift from your servant." But Elisha replied, and he takes an oath here, which Jesus tells us not to do, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept any gift." And though Naaman urged him to take the gift, Elisha refused. So I've decided to refuse any payment from the... No, I haven't. Okay. Elisha could not accept anything that would lead this young man, Naaman, to believe that Elisha was taking any credit for God's glory revealed in this healing. So he couldn't accept it. Verse 17, Naaman said, "All right, but please allow me to do this very special thing." And this is the thing that really, really rocks this story. He says, "Allow me to load 2 of my mules with earth from this place, and I will take it back home with me. Now, from now on, I will never offer burnt offerings or sacrifice to any other God except the Lord." And his intimation is that he's going to offer them on a platform or altar that's made on the earth of Israel. Did he need the dirt, by the way? He didn't need any dirt. He didn't know how to worship Yahweh. His only thought was, I got to take some of this home with me. He could worship Yahweh anywhere. He could. But he wanted to make a public demonstration to all those around him and all those he was returning to, a public demonstration of his new fealty to Yahweh. Could it have been a different kind of demonstration? Absolutely. Absolutely. It didn't have to be this one. He picked this one. Then, if I was writing this story, that would be the end of the story. Hallelujah. Good ending, happy ending. Let's leave it there, shall we? God's inspired writers don't end it there. Verse 18, however, may the Lord pardon me, Elisha, he says, in this one thing. When my master the king goes in the temple of the god Rimmon to worship there and leans on my arm, may the Lord pardon me when I bow too. We just studied Elijah a couple of nights ago. We studied Elijah, about how Elijah was concerned that all the people had bowed down to Baal. And this guy asks God's own prophet, is it going to be okay if I just go ahead and bow down to the god Rimmon? God Rimmon, predecessor to the Roman god Zeus. His temple, the temple of Rimmon, was stylized with a thunderbolt, as Zeus's was. And the Roman temple to Zeus in Damascus was built right on the site of Rimmon's temple. And now in Aleppo, the mosque, the very famous mosque, is built there. It was destroyed in the Civil War of 2013 and being rebuilt as we speak. What would you tell him when he says that? Just one other thing. Just want to tell you, Bob, one other thing. When I go back, I'm going to bow to Rimmon. I know you'll understand. Forgive me in advance when I do that. What would you tell him? No. No, 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 no. No yoga. No inappropriate kinds of prayer. No compromise. You can't do it. No, 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 no. That's what we'd say. I'm confident of it. See what Elisha said. Go in peace. Is this a rule for our life? Is it okay to bow down to other idols? The answer is absolutely not. God takes every case on its own merits. God loves you. He loves me. He knows your sin. He knows your struggles. He knows it all. And He wants to save you in spite of all of those things. Go in peace, Elisha said. So Naaman started at home again. Wow. So here's number 6, contrast, Yahweh versus Rimmon. Rimmon never did anything for Naaman. Yahweh made his life new. And then the rest of the story is a sad, sad contrast between Gehazi and Elisha. Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, my master should not have let this Aramean go away without accepting any of his gifts. Surely as the Lord lives, he takes an oath, I'll chase after him and get something from him. So Gehazi sent off after Naaman. When Naaman saw Gehazi running after him, he climbed down from his chariot and he went to meet him. Everything all right? Naaman asked. Yes, Gehazi said, but my master sent me to tell you that he has 2 young prophets from the hill country of Ephraim have just arrived, and he'd like 75 pounds of silver and 2 sets of clothing to give them, 2 rolls of fabric. Wow. The tangled web we weave when at first we would deceive. Oh, by all means, take twice as much silver, Naaman said. He gave him 2 sets of clothing, tied up the money in 2 bags, and sent 2 of his servants to carry the gifts for Gehazi. But when he arrived at the citadel or the hilltop, Gehazi took the gifts from the servants, set the man back, and then he went and hid the gifts inside the house, seeking to deceive. Contrast of Elisha and Gehazi. He went to his master. Elisha asked him, where have you been, Gehazi? Oh, nowhere, he replied. Okay, rule 1, never lie to God's prophet. Okay, that's just not going to be a good idea. Oh, by the way, if you want to have an addendum, never lie to God either. Well, how about this one? Never lie to yourself. How about this one? Never lie. I think it's in the Decalogue. But Elisha asked him, Don't you realize that I was there in spirit when Naaman stepped down from his chariot to meet you? There are people in our lives, for good and for bad. We don't know who they are. There are angels and demons. There are spiritual forces at work. There are people who would do us well, people who would do us harm. There are people who are secretly going around helping you without your knowledge. And there are people who are going around gossiping about you, tearing you down. We're trusting God for the better and not for the worse. Had an experience happen years ago in our little town. There was a kid. He was a large kid. He was 6'5" or so, 6, big kid, 16 years old when he got caught doing something that was inappropriate. And so he got put in the whatever, juvie. And he was getting sentenced to juvenile hall, and we have a rule in Texas that if you get sentenced to the Texas Youth Commission, they call it, that your parents have to pay child support. And so this kid was getting sentenced to juvenile hall. While his time of incarceration was waiting for trial, a girlfriend of his kept telling him, he was mentally not quite there, you know, and this girlfriend kept telling him that he was that she was pregnant, and she was going to come after him for child support. She wasn't pregnant. There was no way she could have been pregnant. I'm not going to say any more than that, but you know what I mean. But she was messing with his head and saying, I'm going to come after you for child support. So here's this guy. He's brokenhearted. He's disappointed in his parents. He's slow. What do we say anymore? In the old days, we'd say mentally retarded, but we don't say that anymore. So we say that he's mentally impaired. I don't know, whatever we say. So he's hearing this sentence being read out, and the sentence says child support. It's really his parents that are going to have to pay child support to the Texas Youth Commission, but he doesn't understand that. And he just snapped, and he decided he was going to kill himself. So he jumped up, and he's in shackles and handcuffs, and he's all chained up, but he jumps up and he tries to get the bailiff's gun to kill himself. So the bailiff and he are wrestling on the floor, and it's a terrible, terrible, heart-rending scene. If you know the whole story, I had to watch that video so many times. I did not represent him on this case. But after that, they charged him because now he was 17, and that's an adult. So he was charged with a first-degree felony of attacking a police officer to try to get his gun while the police officer was on duty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he was looking at 20 and more years. Mentally impaired, there was just no way that was fair or right. The kid really did not have the culpable mental state to be able to do that. So we're trying that case. And we try the case, and the jury, and I say, folks, if you find for probation on this case, he's probation eligible. If you give him probation, he'll go to the Texas Youth Commission. He'll be there until he's 21. And there's a chance for rehabilitation. Won't you please give him a chance for rehabilitation? Well, most people in my small town, not up for that. But the jury was out for a long, 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 long time. 2 a.m, we're still waiting for the jury to come back. And finally, the jury hangs up. Says we can't come to a thing. It was 2 or 3, whatever it was. And so they called it a day. It was a mistrial. They would have to try it again. So in the process, the district attorney said, okay, I'll agree. We'll give him probation. He goes to the Texas Youth Commission. So from my perspective, it's a win for that kid. It was absolutely the difference between life and death, because putting a 17-year-old mentally impaired child into the Texas Department of Corrections is just not going to end well for anyone. Okay, so fast forward 6-8 months. I'm at some sort of a party in town. And this little man that I've never met came up to me. And he said, do you recognize me? I said, I don't recognize you. He says, you sure you don't? I was on one of your juries. I said, man, I try about a case a month to juries. There's a lot of jurors. I'm sorry I don't recognize you. What case were you on? And he's very exasperated that I don't remember him because it was a long night for him. And he looked at me in the eye and he said, I saved your boy. I was the holdout on the jury. I was the one guy that wouldn't agree to send him away to the penitentiary. God has people. In Naaman's life, he had this little girl. A little girl who was fresh out of options, who was a slave to some woman in some far-off country, who all she knew was that she had a faith in Yahweh that could heal. And she says, Naaman, if you just go put your face before the prophet in Samaria in the same way that I put my face before your wife, you can be free of this. There are people that God has placed in your life, and better yet, you are God's person in the life of other people, many other people, to do that special work, to be an angel, to be a sent one for God, to make a change and a chance, and to make a difference for somebody else's life. Tonight, I'd like to pray for you and me that we could be that person. We don't need to take any silver or rolls of cloth for it. We don't need to be even known. But we're the ones that are going to say something good about somebody. We're the ones who are going to refrain from saying something bad about somebody. We're the ones who are going to slip somebody a $10 bill or a $50 bill or a $100 bill when they need it. We're going to be the one who takes care of other people who are in need, because then they will know that we are His disciples because of our love. And that's our calling. Let me pray with you just now. Heavenly Father, just now, please give us this opportunity. Open our eyes, take the scales off our eyes so that we can see who needs us and in what way we might bless them. We ask your forgiveness where we've failed to do this in the past. We know we've failed. You know we've failed. We won't lie to you or ourselves. Just let us be better now. Transform our hearts and our lives to be soft and tender to those who are in need. Give us the courage to act when acting is appropriate. Give us the courage to keep our mouths shut. And keeping our mouths shut is appropriate. We would see Jesus tonight. We ask it in His name. Amen. Thank you and good night.
Thank you once again for joining us for our 7th night of We Would See Jesus, the 2021 Kentucky-Tennessee Conference's online camp meeting. I have to say that Naaman's faith is inspiring, isn't it? As he stood out and was different from those around him to follow his convictions and worship the God who healed him. I have to ask myself, are you and I willing to do the same? Jesus will be coming soon, my friend. He will. Let each of us choose today to follow Him no matter the cost. And tomorrow night, we will be joined by Pastor Doug Batchelor, president of Amazing Facts Ministry. Pastor Batchelor is a good friend of mine, and I know that you will be blessed by his biblical messages. His message tomorrow is called To See the King. Please join us here at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and don't forget to bring a friend or share the links with your friends. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you again so much for this camp meeting. Even though it's virtually, we still have time to meet together and to feast on your word. And Lord, I just pray in a very special way that you will bless this time that we are taking out of our day to spend time with you. Lord, to spend time with the friends that are gathering with us. And Lord, may each of us be encouraged, truly, to worship you with all our heart, our mind, our soul, our strength, Lord, for your honor and glory. We know you're coming soon. May we all be ready. In Jesus' precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Mysterious symbols, timelines revealed in dreams, messages of doom? The books of Daniel and Revelation can seem like the most daunting parts of the Bible. You might think, maybe I'll read that later. These books may be complicated at first glance, but they embody the beautiful unveiling of Jesus' rescue plan for our world, a plan which is unfolding right now. That's why we've created a unique space at godled.org where you can study these important books of prophecy for yourself, one interactive lesson at a time. Starting today, learn how the Bible unlocks itself. Go at your own pace and get real feedback from the God-led community as you study through our easy-to-navigate course. Don't wait any longer to understand God's plan for you as revealed in these important prophecies. Start unraveling the biblical books of Daniel and Revelation at godled.org.